What's going on, you guys? Uncle Jesse here, and we're in the end game now. This is the Peopoly Phenom L. It's the newest resin 3D printer by the folks over at Peopoly. It might look like a Phenom, but it's got one massive difference, and that's its build volume. This is huge, an absolutely huge resin 3D printer that's going to be available here for pre-order and purchasing at the end of the month. Crazy excited about this, and yes, in fact, you can print a full-size helmet in resin in one piece on this printer, and we'll be taking a look at that here in just a little bit, as well as a bunch of other things that I've printed while I've had some hands-on time with this over the past few weeks. So let's jump right in, and I'll give you guys my initial thoughts on this machine, and we'll take a look at some of those cool prints. So the first thing that you're going to notice is probably the size of this machine, and funny enough, the height of the Phenom L is almost the exact same height as the Phenom. I believe it's just slightly taller than the standard Phenom. It is definitely wider, and it's a lot heavier. And by a lot heavier, I mean you're gonna need two people, for real, two people to carry this. It arrived on a crate. I mean, this thing is just it's a beast. It's a monster of a machine. And thankfully there's another local maker here, 3D print guy, that was able to stop by and help me move and lift this up on top of my desk prior to all of the whole social distancing thing going down here not too long ago. And by the way, congrats on an early graduation, by the way. But this thing is heavy, and I mean really heavy. It's about 150 pounds, and again, you're gonna need an extra hand moving this. I'm not anticipating moving this off of this workbench here for a few months until everything sort of quiets down and I can fully get it in the other room. But everything was packaged up and secured really nicely, zero damage, with this being such a huge heavy machine and arriving on a crate. Getting everything unboxed was pretty straightforward. Everything was neatly, nicely stored on the inside of the printer itself. One thing that I did have to do is put the printer on its back end and take the bottom off so that I could get access to the power source and update the voltage on the machine. So it also sports the same door style as the Phenom, with this huge acrylic display that's going to help prevent the UV light getting in, but also allows you to very easily get in there and see your prints as they're printing. On the inside of this, you're going to see the massive vat that we'll take a look at in a second, as well as the angled build plate. Yes, they've learned from the Phenom, added in a angled build plate along with handles on the side of it, and we'll take a look at that here in just a second as well. Also on the front is a really nice touchscreen display interface, pretty much the exact same as the Phenom. Super straightforward and easy to use. The interface is, again, really responsive, and it's just very straightforward. If you're looking at the front of the printer, on the right side of the machine, you'll see a USB port where you're going to be loading your files that you've sliced that you want to print. You'll also see your Ethernet port, where hopefully in the future we'll have internet connectivity or network connectivity for this machine to be able to directly send files from your printer to the machine. And also towards the back right side of the machine, you're going to have your power switch, as well as the port where you're going to plug in your power. There are also some massive fans on this machine, so when the printer is actually up and running and printing, not right now, I don't have prints running, so the fans aren't running, which is nice. But when the prints are going, it's loud. It's, I would say, equally as loud as the Phenom, so just keep that in mind. There's some crazy fans in here to keep things cool as it's printing for this massive LED LCD display. Speaking of that display, it's an MSLA 12.5 4K display, and it has a build volume of 345.6 by 194.4 by 400 millimeters, or translates roughly into about 13.6 by 7.6 by 15.7 inches. It's a really, really big build volume for a resin 3D printer. It just still blows my mind that we're able to have a machine this big printing in resin. So the one thing I haven't talked about yet is the price point, and that's $3,000. Yeah, I know I said $3,000. It's probably a lot more than a lot of you are willing to spend on a resin 3D printer, but it's the largest one that's out there that's not 10 grand or more, as far as I'm aware, during my very basic Google-y searching that I did there. And by no means would I recommend this as probably your very first resin 3D printer or just jumping into 3D printing. Start with an El Mars or an Anycubic Photon, dip your feet in it, dip your toes in it, and then sort of work your way up to something like this. This is really for folks that are doing professional jobs or mass printing for, let's say, Etsy or miniatures. I mean, you could print a lot of miniatures on this thing at one time. Or maybe you're into cosplay and you're really looking to up your cosplay game and spend a whole lot less time 3D printing and sanding, because you're going to be able to cut down on a lot of those with this machine. All right, so I also want to talk to you about this build plate here and show this off. Again, it's a massive build plate. It's an angled build plate, so the resin no longer pools along the top and it just pours right off as you're printing with it. It also has two really nice size handles on both sides, which makes it a lot easier to get this on and off, get your prints out there. And I did also want to just give you a quick comparison to some of the other build plates that are out there. So here is the Anycubic Photon. I mean, just, it's comical almost. Here's the Epax X10, which is, if I go like vertical to horizontal here, it's just hangs over slightly, but I could probably get about 2.5 of these X10 build plates in here. Here's the Phenom to the Phenom. So here's the standard Phenom to the L. Here you can just get a quick visual comparison of the actual size differences there. And also I just want to show you quickly the Transform to the Phenom L. Just to show you, I mean, the Transform previously was the largest resin printer that I had. It beat out the standard Phenom by a bit. The Phenom L just, it's a big jump between the two build volumes. I also wanted to talk with you about this big, beautiful, heavy-duty vat here. This can easily store 2 of these big bottles of resin, and I mean easily. And depending on some of the prints that you're going to be running, you might end up having to refill this as well. And again, for a quick comparison, here is the standard Phenom and here's the Phenom L that you can see side by side just how much bigger the vats are. And if you're thinking about upgrading from the Photon, Anycubic Photon to this, yeah, it's... Another thing I wanted to mention is that when you slide the vat into the printer, it's going to basically stop it where it needs to be, and then you can just screw it down. You don't have to worry about fully removing the screws and taking those out in order to get the vat out, something that I really like. It also helps prevent me from dropping those screws into the vat and then potentially poking holes in the FEP sheets here. All right, so let's talk about some of these prints already. Enough about the machine. You all know it's a big machine. It prints really big, has a huge build volume. Let's talk about some of the things that I printed on it. The very first thing I printed was a test file. I unfortunately don't have that still. I think I might have tossed it by accident. But I really had, like, from the get-go, 0 issues getting my prints up and running with this machine. So it worked really great for me on this. So one of the next things I wanted to run off in print was just, I wanted to maximize that print volume there, or at least the build plate, and get as many things on that build plate as I could. And I went and printed a bunch of masks from Villainous Props. These are a whole bunch of different, I think they're called domino masks. They're eye masks that you can print and cosplay wear. All of them printed pretty good. I think I had one that had some issues with the supports not adhering. This was prior to me really further refining my support settings for this particular machine. I still haven't gone through and updated my support settings based on 3D Printing Pro and some of the stuff that I've learned from that just yet. But here's an example. You'll see where the supports failed in certain areas and it lifted in one of the corners for the masks. Other masks printed just great. Like here is I think this is a Red Hood mask. And I mean, God, these things just turned out so nice. So nice. I think in the past, I printed one of these in resin before and I was able to print one. And it was this one. Not this specific one, but the same file on one of the resin printers, maybe like the Elgu Mars or something like that. So being able to print 5 at one time just is really wild. So it took about 15 to 16 hours to print all of these masks at once at 0.05 layer height, which is super fine compared to anything that I was able to previously print on my FDM printers. And the other knock-on benefit I'm seeing of this is the time reduction. I mean, forget about how smooth these are right off the print bed, and it's going to cut down on the post-processing, but just being able to print things a lot faster than I was over on my FDM printers or over on multiple resin 3D printers is such a cool thing. So after printing those masks, I was really excited about the thought of printing a full-size helmet on this machine. So I went off and printed a Black Panther helmet all in one piece. So this file's from Nico Industries, and it's actually a two-part helmet. There's the main helmet, and then there's the back side that you can magnetically attach here that's gonna snap on to the back of the helmet. And this thing looks unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I have done literally zero sanding, and I've only applied one really light coat of automotive primer to this particular helmet, just so it would show up a little bit better for you guys here in the video. And again, the results are just stunning. There's still some things that I'm gonna have to really finely sand here, but this would have been weeks, and I mean weeks, of me sanding and filling and priming over on an FDM print. It's just the results on this are incredible. I did end up getting one slight layer shift in this during the print. And again, I think this has to do with the print itself is pretty heavy. I hollowed it out where I could, but it's still the amount of resin to actually make this. It's got to be at least a pound here in terms of weight. So the supports that I had to run on this were pretty heavy duty, and I think it held in there pretty nicely. However, I probably could have done just a slightly better job to help prevent that one layer shift that I'm seeing right in the front. But again, the corrective process on this is going to be next to nothing in terms of sanding and slightly filling versus what I would have had to do over on an FDM print. The other amazing thing is that this main body portion of the helmet only took 30 hours to print. There is no way, absolutely no way this would have printed in anything under than probably 3 days or more on one of my, like a CR10 or something like that. So obviously, I mean, there's going to be a big price difference here between the cost of resin and the machine versus filament and the cost of a CR10, but the results here are just absolutely mind-blowing. And technically, this is a print failure in my book because I scaled it slightly wrong. I was probably off by just a little bit there, my percentage-wise for scaling. When I put this on my 3D scan of my head, yeah, I can not fully get this on my head. I can't get it over my chin here. I'm going to have to remove the bottom portion here so that I can get my chin on and then be able to magnetically attach the bottom of the chin piece here. I still had a little bit of wiggle room on the printer as well, which is what's killing me. I was just trying to scale this so it would be really nicely, snugly fit on my head. I didn't want a really loose version of this helmet, sort of like the Hasbro helmet that I have already. The next thing I went off and printed is this SubZero Mask from Wexter. He actually took this from one of his miniature files and scaled it up, and I think probably reworked it a bit so it would be an actual cosplay piece that you could run off and wear. This was actually printed in Ceratec's new smoky black resin, and loving the actual look of this. It also got retweeted by Ed Boon from Mortal Kombat. That's pretty friggin' wild. I was very excited about that. But yeah, again, the results on this were really nice. Zero issues with this. Obviously, it was a much smaller print, but it only took 15 hours to print on this. I also have a full build plate full of miniatures that I ran off and printed. And I mean, I really maximized the full build plate and printed a bunch of miniatures here. It's actually one miniature file in multiple pieces. I'll actually be doing a full rundown of this particular print. I'm really excited about this one, and it truly is a monster print. The thing I wanted to call out with that specifically is, again, if you're in the business of making and printing miniatures, that might be another use case for you because you can print a lot, and I mean a ton of miniatures on this machine all at one time, and especially the case that the miniatures typically aren't that large. This was probably a little bit bigger than your average miniature print that you're going to run off and do. So you're going to have really fast print times for a huge volume of prints. And the last thing I wanted to show you is this amazing Nova helmet from the Broken Nerd that I ran off and printed on the L. This is like really and truly blows my mind. This is exactly it. This is it, people. This is the game changer right here. This is an all-in-one, fully resin printed helmet on this machine. I honestly didn't think I'd see the day that this would actually happen. And I can put it on and it fits my head. Daryl, aka The Broken Nerd, did such an amazing job modeling this file. By the way, it's available over on his Patreon. I'll have links down below to all of the files that I printed here. So if you're interested in picking up one of those and printing one for yourself, you'll be able to find those. It's just, again, a stunning file and a really amazing print. Again, it's one of these that I've done zero post-processing on. I only put down a layer of automotive primer on this just so that you could see it a little bit better. I also printed this in that smoky black, and it's slightly transparent, and I loved the look of it, but it just was really hard for me to show that on video, so I wanted to put down some primer so that you really could see the full effects or the full details of this actual print. So still here, it's not 100% perfect, but it's like 97, 98% perfect. There's only gonna be a few small areas that I need to sand down, and it's pretty much ready for painting, or in some cases, maybe you're interested in casting and making molds. You're one huge step closer to that with a machine like this. The other thing I forgot to mention is that this only took 36 hours to print. Crazy. This would be like a 5-day, 6-day print on my CR10. So I think I've hyped up this machine enough for you guys. So let me tell you about a few of the drawbacks that you need to consider with this. One is obviously the price point. It's nowhere near as inexpensive as a CR10 or something along those lines of a similar printer with a similar build volume. But you're paying for the technology here. So obviously being able to print faster, print larger, and obviously at a higher resolution than you can get pretty much with anything on an FDM printer. The other thing is that this thing chews through resin like nothing else. And resin isn't exactly the cheapest thing in the world. You can certainly get deals on it from time to time or buy it in bulk, which tends to be what I do, is mass order it. But you're gonna be spending a lot on resin when printing with something like this. This Nova helmet, it was easily 2.5 to 3 of these monster bottles of resin here. So you're gonna just pour through resin. So it's easily about $100 or so for you to be able to print something this big. And you're gonna have to factor in occasionally your prints are gonna fail or you're gonna have issues. Your print failures are gonna be pretty expensive when you're working with something this large, if something does happen. Another thing to call out is that when you're working with that vat, and if you do have a failure or just looking to change out the resin, it's just so large that you're gonna have to end up setting it down, having multiple bottles up so that you can transfer resin from one, then pour it into the next. It's just, I'm not saying that Peopoly did anything bad or could have improved on this in any way. I think it's a different process. It's something that you're gonna have to get used to when working with a machine of this size. Again, the fans are loud, but I'm honestly used to that from my Phenom, so it's not really a big deal to me anymore at this point, and I've gotten very much used to it. So when it's up and running and actually printing, those fans are engaged and pretty loud, but again, it doesn't really bother me at all. And another thing is that these are not mono screens on this machine here. They do have the Peopoly Noir, which is another iteration I think 3D Printing Nerd had access to and probably already did a video or two on that. But that allows you to print even faster. It's not going to have the same build volume as this, but it's going to allow you to print faster, and that screen is going to last a whole lot longer than the standard screens here. But there is, again, a price compromise that you're going to have to run into with that. And if you're thinking about getting one of these just for printing replica props and helmets, keep in mind that the build volume isn't quite as large as what you're going to see on a CR10. So narrow helmets like the Black Panther or the Nova helmet that I'm showing you here are going to print great on this. But if you're wanting to print something like a Wolverine cowl that has huge ears on it, you're going to end up having to slice that file somewhere to fit it on this build plate and then doing a bit more work after it's done printing just to get the multiple parts back together. So I'll have links down below to the Phenom L, to both Matter Hackers and Peopoly's website. So if you're interested in picking up either of them, those might be affiliate links which help out the channel here. So thank you very much with that. I also want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this without your help. And if you're interested in finding out how you can help support this channel, you can find out links down below. So just as a quick recap, I would say if you are in the market for upping your resin printing game, or you're, let's say, working for a video game company or a collectibles, or you're a designer, or you're in the market for selling miniatures or creating replica props and creating molds and casts of those, and you're sick and tired of spending all of your time printing with prints and FDM and finishing, you might want to consider something like this. It's certainly an investment, but I think the end results are going to be well worth it for you. And this is not a full review of this machine. I do intend on printing a lot more with this over the upcoming weeks, probably month or more, and we'll be doing a full review video of the printer after I've gotten a whole bunch more hands-on time with the machine. So I just want to say thank you so much again for watching. If you're interested again about any of the prints or the machine, I'll have links to those down below. And let me know down in the comments if there's something that you're interested in me printing on this and showing in an upcoming video. Would love to know some more creative ideas from you guys. Hey, thanks again for watching, you guys, and I'll see you next time.